Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada, and we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful September 25th, 2019. Grondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it almost seems like we're basking in the middle of summer down here. Temperature's still in the mid-90s. I'm sweating every time I walk outside. I got to put paper towels under my arms.
Yeah.
The sweat's dripping off me like the footballs off the hands of the wide receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, sweat and football go hand in hand. There's a lot of good old boys. I met someone from Georgia not the other day, and he said, man, California's kind of dry. I told him it's actually a desert, except for all that Pacific Ocean water. People get full, Big C. But I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. And I know you talk about the armpits and all the good old boy stuff that makes us smell good. But what did cavemen do? They didn't have deodorant. They just had leaves to rub under their arms, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think a lot of that smell was to keep the predators away from them. You know, something didn't smell too good. It normally didn't taste too good, so they could keep a lot of the animals away from it.
Richard Pryor had a joke. He talked about some dogs looking for love. You know, dogs look for love, too. They want to be like that good old boy for the New York Jets, go around kissing on other dogs. And he walked up on a horse with that ain't no dog. You smell that? I still remember Richard Pryor's joke from back in the day. But deodorant and the lack of it can keep you safe. Is that what you're saying, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the odoriferous smell that we hear about a lot of different things in society is what's going on down south and all this heat.
Yeah, that's funny. But some women actually like men that don't wear deodorant. It's a strange thing, but it's all fair in love and war. I want to say Google, and Big C Sports is brought to you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, and you'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show, and then I'll introduce Big C as the mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the help from our sponsors. Big C, we always give out the National Suicide Hotline. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And if you're military veterans, you can get help, but it's also for civilians. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, it's a great outreach program that when it was set up by the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, for people to reach out to with anonymity. I mean, we have so many unfortunate Americans who feel left out without every day here in this country, and they feel that they have no hope. And unfortunately, many of those people, Charlton, end up committing suicide. We have over 20 veterans a day doing that, and an equal number of adolescents and young adults, Charlton, doing the same thing. We have to find a way to stem the tide of that. I mean, when we think about our administration and all our politicians, all of them are thinking about themselves and not those people that are in desperate need in America, Charlton. And to have a shoulder that you can lean on and not be judgmental is one of the greatest things to have in life. This is one of the reasons why family is so important. But most of these people don't have families. They've been ostracized from their families, or their families may even think of them as being weak. So this National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there. Those people on the other end of the line, they care. They want to listen to you. They want to hear their story. They want to extend that olive branch to you to help you get better, get stronger, Charlton. So if you know of anyone who may be going through troubling times or just someone who needs someone to talk to, please don't hesitate in giving out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number to that person.
800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And let's hope on the other line. I also want to say a PSA for Northern California. You know, we've had the fires out here for too many times, Big C. And I even go back to the fire in the Oakland Hills, and that was back in the, I believe, the late 80s, early 90s, and that destroyed a lot of properties. And then the Napa fires that happened just about 2 years ago. And then we just had Northern California up near Chico, Paradise area. And so PG&E is asking customers from about a 200-mile radius between the Bay Area and also all over Northern California, they're turning off the power. You don't have a choice, Big C. So that means food is going bad. That means that people cannot do certain things to keep their ice melts if you don't have, if it's not cold enough. So there are people who count on that electricity to keep them safe. So I just want to ask people again, I know you're down south and you have the floods that come down south and the hurricanes, but have you ever had where your electric companies turn off the power for several hours, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's something that we haven't suffered through. And during these heated times of the year, refrigeration is very essential to everybody. Any time of the year, refrigeration is essential. It's to keep food from going spoiled, Charlton. It keeps it cool and refrigerated. You think about people who have medical needs, Charlton, who rely on the refrigeration for the insulin and other medical medications that have to be refrigerated. A lot of babies, Charlton, their food needs to be refrigerated. So, I mean, this is a horrific time when we think about it, but we also look at the overpopulation of a particular area. And California is the highest populated state in the nation. This is a state that has to find a way to deal with their energy crisis and not punish the general public.
That's very true, Big C. So hopefully everybody can just heed the warning, stay safe and as cool as possible. I want to jump into college football. And everybody talks about who has the best football, who is the biggest, strongest, fastest conference, who's going to have more teams ranked in the top 10. And I like the way Big C does his top 10. We'll be bringing that to you later in the week. But when you think about not wearing deodorant, a lot of college kids don't wear deodorant, Big C, and a lot of them go to football games. I've sat by a couple of them back in the day. But in college football, what do you think are the most 5 difficult stadiums to visit? And everybody has their opinion. But I'm going to give you my thoughts and get your opinion on it. I still say, even though they have not won a national championship, when you go to Kyle Field and Texas A&M, I think that's one of the most intimidating environments for an opponent. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's where the 12th man was formed at Kyle Field long before the Seahawks had it. And now that stadium has been expanded to 105 seating capacity, it is a horrid place to go for a visiting team, Charlton, with the noise, influx in there, and the fans are just ravenous for that 60 minutes of that contest.
Yeah, Jimbo has to get it together. $75 million in that stadium. You have everything going for you. Big C, another stadium, I would say Penn State, the Beaver Stadium. When you think about it, they had all the scandal with the late Joe Paterno, but Coach Franklin's turned that. He kept them steady, Big C, and the crowd has never let them down. Your thoughts?
Well, college football has always been about the players, and they don't control what goes outside the walls of the locker room, Charlton. And you think about the great players that have always come through Happy Valley there and played in that great, illustrious stadium. They have one of the greatest decors when they have the whiteout, and they do that once or twice every other year, Charlton.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful atmosphere to play in college football.
Yeah, and there's talk that Donald Trump heard they had a whiteout, and he wanted to go to a Penn State game. He was disappointed when he just meant the jerseys, Big C. So sometimes whiteout doesn't mean nefarious. Also, another stadium that a lot of people, especially on the West Coast, Husky Stadium up in Seattle, Washington, right off of Puget Sound. That place it's like an overhang on the both sidelines, and when it gets rocking, it only holds 72,000, but it sounds like 100,000 plus. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the echo that comes from the metal roof in that stadium, Charlton, can be deafening when Washington is up on an opponent, and it's been a tough place to play for a lot of people going in over the years. Plus, they're overlooking Puget Sound, which is one of the most picturesque backdrops anywhere in a football game. I think a lot of teams get distracted by that also.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous place, Big C. And then if you go, we just talked about the heat and humidity that you guys have down south. If you look at Memorial Stadium at Clemson, that has been a home field advantage, not just because the Tigers are good, but Death Valley is a tough place to play with the crowd noise. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think just the name Death Valley means so much. It's an intimidating factor when an opposing team comes in there, Charlton. And Clemson's been such a dominant team over the last 5 years in college football. It's been tough for every opponent who shows up at Clemson.
Yeah, that's very true. But I think, and again, who's number one? Everybody has their idea. Some people think it's the Big House in Michigan. Other think it's Ohio State, Buckeye Stadium. Everybody has their own opinion. And even some people think back in the day when Nebraska was winning, it was very tough to play in that stadium. But I would still say, my opinion is Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, LSU Fighting Tigers. That's a place that can get over 100,000 fans, and they all make a lot of noise. Big C, your thoughts?
And that's the original Death Valley. You think about it, you name two stadiums that are known as Death Valley back-to-back. One of the things about Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Charlton, is the humidity.
Yeah.
This is the place where they normally play night games because of the heat. But it's also always been an intimidating facility. Way back in the 50s, when LSU became a dominant program, Charlton, it was always tough for people to go in there to play.
Yeah.
But I'd like to add two more programs to that list that you got, Charlton. People are not going to think about them because they're not in the Power 5 conferences.
Yeah.
But I think these two facilities might be, if not more than any other, the most intimidating places to play in college football.
What would that
If you
be?
go to Flagstaff, Arizona, University of Northern Arizona, they play up in a little place called the QB Dome,
Yeah.
their Division I AA school.
Yep.
The elevation at their stadium is 6,900 feet above sea level.
There's no air.
So you think about the mental torment of a team coming in there right off the bat, knowing that they're going to be short on oxygen
Yeah.
going up to Northern Arizona. And then one other school I'd like to add to the list, that'd be the University of Wyoming. Out in obscurity in Wyoming. I mean, there's only 1 million people that live in the state.
Yep.
But the altitude of their stadium is 7,200 feet above sea level.
Wow.
So you think about a team coming up from sea level, going 1.5 miles up in the air to play football.
Yeah.
You're going to be a little short on breath, and it can be quite intimidating.
Yeah, it can be quite intimidating. And I just want to add on to that, too. If we were to look at, say, Big C's top 5 NFL stadiums, you know, everybody has their opinion about NFL crowds. And I know that, you know, it just depends on if you're winning or not. But I would say New Orleans, because of the dome, and other stadiums have domes too. But I would say Dallas has a dome. But I still like that New Orleans crowd a lot more than Dallas. You know, Houston has a dome also. Those three stadiums have domes. But I would say, really, outside of New Orleans, you have Seattle up at Safeco. I mean, that's a great place, a Quest Field for the Seattle Seahawks. And also, Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, one of the oldest places, but that's my top 5. Would you agree or disagree, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I still think the most intimidating place to play in the NFL is in Foxborough, Massachusetts.
Oh, really?
At Gillette Stadium.
Yeah.
When you have to go face the New England Patriots at home.
Yeah.
This is a team that has controlled the NFL for the last decade, the most dominant franchise that I've seen in my lifetime. People know when they go up there that normally their season is not going to have a good outlook once they walk out of Gillette Stadium.
Yeah.
And the Patriots have been to so many Super Bowls, people almost just hand the victories when they get there.
Yeah, it's funny how they already can book hotels and they know they're right every other year since Brady's been there. And speaking of college football still, University of Houston starting quarterback Derek King, this guy's legit, but he's decided to redshirt after only 4 games. In the opening game of the season, 2 losses. The Oklahoma head coach Lincoln Riley said that King's the best athletic quarterback that he's ever seen in a high school or college. And this guy's also a sprinter. He was a sprinter in high school as well. But, I mean, why would you think he would make that decision, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, a lot of proponents out there are saying, well, he's redshirting because this is going to give Dana Holgorsen a better opportunity to recruit and build a team around him. I kind of think I look at the statement of what Lincoln Riley said, that he's the most athletic quarterback that he's ever seen, college or high school.
Yeah.
And we see what Lincoln Riley has done with his last 3 transfer quarterbacks. If you go to Baker Mayfield, won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray won the Heisman Trophy. Matter of fact, Derek King broke all of Kyler Murray's high school records in Texas.
Yeah.
So what a fitting place. Now he has Jalen Hurts, who's transferred in from Alabama. Derek King is going to have 1 more year of eligibility. That is a pattern with Lincoln Riley. I only need you 1 year to get to the NFL.
Yeah.
So if Derek King returns to Houston, it will be a miracle. My money is at him ending up in Norman, Oklahoma, Charlton, under Lincoln Riley.
You know, it's amazing because the players can think now and they can follow that yellow brick road to the NFL if they get that opportunity. I think young men should have the right to do whatever they want to do. I want to ask you a thought. When you talk about winning, would you believe, because we do Big C's Friday Night Lights, and that's coming up also on Friday, the longest winning high school football streak in the nation belongs to Caledonia High School, the Warriors out of Minnesota, they've won 58 consecutive games, 5 state titles. Big C, 17 shutouts during that span, and also a shutout in last year's 2A state championship game. They've outscored their opponents during the streak 2,329 points to 421, and that's high school. You know them good old boys are working this blocking stance pretty well. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is what I've always talked about when you talk about the top 10 teams in the country.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out and recruit to have a dominant high school program. This team in Minnesota has proved that 5 consecutive state titles, Charlton.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the winning streak, having the 58-game winning streak, the longest winning streak in the country without going out and recruiting other kids, bringing them into your district that don't live there. This is what high school football is all about, building rivalry, building tradition. That's what these kids have established. You know, it's like a school that was out in California. I think it was De La Salle, who had the longest winning streak, I think 151 games,
151
the national
games.
winning streak.
Yeah.
But this is what that does, Charlton. This is not a private school. This is a general high school. They recruit the kids within their area. These are normal campus kids that have gone out there and they've built a tradition in this high school that nobody wants to see falter.
Yeah.
In 58 consecutive games, I don't care where you're playing at, Charlton. That's tremendous.
Yeah, I think the national win streak for public high school is Hudson High School out of Michigan. They at one time won 72 games in a row, and they are a public school too. So we know a lot of private schools are going to own those records, but it's good to see when a team that does not recruit can win that many as well. But I want to get your thoughts, because whether it's high school, college, or pro, when you think about some of the things going on in the sports universe, what would you say? And I'll give you my opinion, and you can tell me yours. Everybody's different. But I think if you think about the greatest sporting event that I've ever seen in my lifetime, I'm going to say for me, it was Muhammad Ali when he actually knocked out George Foreman, owner of the George Foreman Group, Big C, did it in Zaire in 1974. And why that resonates with me is because it's going back over 40 years, 44 years or so. And I remember seeing George Foreman at a gym in Hayward, California, in the Bay Area, and just after he beaten up Joe Frazier. I think he knocked down Frazier 6 times. Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! I'll never forget that. And I was scared because I did not want this guy to beat Ali. And when Ali had a whole country behind him, that to me, I will always remember that. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when people talk about the greatest sporting events of all time that they ever seen, a lot of people will talk about a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But a Super Bowl lasts for 3 hours, Charlton. It takes multiple people to interact. You talk about the World Series. People talk about how great some of those have been.
Yep.
But that's a 7-game series that basically covers 10 days to 2 weeks.
Yeah.
When you think about that, the NBA title is a similar type thing, Charlton. It's not done in one time. The greatest sporting event I've ever witnessed in my life is also a boxing event.
Yeah.
But it dealt with 2 middleweights, Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hearns in 1984. To me, and I think of all the boxing experts who've ever seen a fight, that is the greatest 8 minutes in sports that anybody has ever witnessed.
Yep.
Everybody watching the fight did not even think that these fighters would make it out of the first round, Charlton. It was a slugfest.
Yeah.
Both of them went down. In the second round, they were thinking about a technical draw because Marvin Hagler had a gash across his forehead and was bleeding profusely.
Yeah.
And he knew he needed to knock out Thomas Hearns. And they came out in the third round, which was just like the first and second round, Charlton, in a slugfest until Marvin Hagler dropped Thomas Hearns. And still to this day, Charlton, it is the most exhilarating 8 minutes of sport in my lifetime that I've ever seen.
Well, it's amazing how boxing, because it's mano a mano, it's in the ring, and nobody can help you out other than you're going to get knocked out or you're going to get a decision. And I know guys hate when they have the decision, and it's just amazing how people do. I think Sugar Ray Robinson, when you think about fighters, Big C, he had knocked out 40. He was, I think, 89-0 or 85-0. I think it was 89-0, but he knocked out 40 of his 69 fights in the first round. So and that wasn't on TV, but it's always amazing when we can go back to boxing as one of the better moments in sports also. I want to just jump into the world of baseball because we're getting ready for this hunt for October and the dynasty that will be crowned again for Major League Baseball. Imagine going 19-31 in your first 50 games. The third worst record in the National League, Big C. As of May 24th, the Washington Nationals clinched a wild card berth with a 6-5 victory over their old friend Bryce Harper and $330 million Bryce Harper and the division rivals, the Philadelphia Phillies, on Tuesday night. Not knocking Bryce Harper, but when people complain about paying NFL players that have won, Bryce Harper hasn't won a thing. And he barely bats over the 240. But he's worth $330 million. That's just crazy. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it was great to see the Washington Nationals, Charlton, advance to the wild card slot in the National League. They got better without Bryce Harper. They actually have a pretty solid outfield. But they have a very dominant pitching staff, is what you need this time of the year. They got 3 pitchers in their staff, Charlton, that have amassed more than 230 strikeouts on the season.
Wow.
So they're going to be a formidable opponent for whoever they play in that first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, as pitching will always get it done. You know, we talk about Houston being a favorite. It's not because they're paying someone $300 million. It's because they have pitching. You think about Edmundo Vargas. He hit a 9th-inning game-time pitch hit it was a home run Tuesday and a bases-loaded single in the 19th. Big C was 1:34 a.m. local time on Wednesday. It gave the Arizona Diamondbacks a 3-2 win over the mighty St. Louis Cardinals. The game lasted 6 hours, 53 minutes. The game featured, Big C, 24 pitchers, 48 strikeouts. The Diamondbacks used a franchise record 30 players and what was the longest game by innings at Chase Field in the history of that stadium, Big C. And there's allegedly over 100,000 hot dogs and bottled water sold together, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I'm very impressed by the young man hitting a home run in the 9th inning on Tuesday and then coming back on Wednesday, hitting the game-winning single in the 16th inning. You know, you think about it, 6 hours and 54 minutes for a baseball game.
Yeah.
That's a 2-day span of baseball games. I know they've always talked about recently putting a time clock on baseball, but I think this is something that baseball is seriously going to have to consider. And even when you bring in a relief pitcher in baseball, Charlton, it should be a rule in baseball that relief pitcher has to face at least 3 batters.
Yeah.
You bring in a relief pitcher, he's facing 1 batter, then he's out of there, and you got another 5-minute stretch before the next pitcher is facing somebody else. Baseball games are getting too long, and we're talking about just under 7 hours.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And didn't score 20 runs?
No, it's amazing. Yeah, they got to have a time clock or something. Madison Bumgarner planning to pitch 1 more inning this season after he started Tuesday and tossed 7 innings. 12 relievers followed him on the night. The Giants and the Rockets combined to use a Major League record 25 pitchers. Colorado finally finished off San Francisco 8-5 early Wednesday morning when Charlie Blackmon hit a 3-run homer in the 16th inning. The game lasted 5 hours and 31 minutes, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, baseball has become a marathon, and a marathon amongst meaningless games. When you talk about these last 2 games, Celtics, neither one of those teams are in the playoffs, but they still have that competitive spirit, and that's what I appreciate about professional athletes. They get paid to play the game.
Yeah.
And they have not given up on what they need to do productivity-wise. You got 2 combined games, Charlton, that lasted 13 hours.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's always about having entertainment, but there's a time you got to consider the fans too. But there's so much money involved. You got to have people playing 5-hour games. It doesn't make any sense, but the money will always rule out, Big C. Cleveland Indians third baseman Jose Ramirez said he was ready to play in his first play since the parents since August 24th. I think they were switch hitting. Ramirez smacked the first inning grand slam in the first plate appearance, swinging left-handed against the Chicago White Sox. He followed that up, Big C, with a 3-run shot from the right side of the plate in the 5th inning. Have you ever seen that happen before? Your thoughts?
Well, switch hitting home runs, Charlton, it's not an anathema in baseball. It has been done before, but you think about a guy first game back in almost a month.
Yeah.
Getting back on the diamond, and as soon as he sees a pitch, Charlton, he's jacking it out for a grand slam. What a great motivational lift for the Cleveland Indians, Charlton, to propel them to the victory.
Yeah, it's great. This time of year, baseball is competing with football when the playoffs come. There are not a lot of things that are more exciting than a baseball game in the playoffs, especially when you have an elimination game and you have a 1-run game, you have runners on base. It's amazing, it's electrifying, and we're coming close to seeing that, Big C. Tonight's baseball schedule, games are already underway. St. Louis at Arizona, Minnesota at Detroit, Milwaukee's at Cincinnati, the New York Yankees at Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, they're at Washington again. And I think Chicago at Pittsburgh. I love to see the Cubs get in there. Big C. Baltimore at Toronto. Miami at New York. Mets. You still have a lot of hope for the Chicago Cubs getting in. Big C, your thoughts?
No, Charlton, they've been eliminated. They were eliminated by the Cardinals. The Cardinals have won the Central Division. They're in. The Cubs are out. And there's a lot of talk right now that Joe Madden may not be back next year.
That doesn't make any sense in the world unless he doesn't want to stay there, Big C. Baltimore at Toronto, Miami at New York Mets, as we mentioned, and then Boston at Texas. It's amazing. Boston, they set the world on fire last year. And they got out of the blocks late. They were up in Seattle, and they got up to a slow start. It's not guaranteed you're going to get back. Houston was dominant, Big C. They got taken out by Boston. So the last 2 years, we've had replacements in the AL and the championship game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that just shows how tough the American League is, Charlton. That it's a revolving door for who's going to get to the World Series over there. It's always been great for baseball to have teams at a round table. When you look at the representation from the American League over the last decade, Charlton, you've had more than a half dozen teams that have represented them in the World Series.
Yeah, baseball's great right now, Big C. Atlanta at Kansas City, Colorado at San Francisco, Oakland A's at the LA Angels, Anaheim, they should call them Anaheim, but they still call them LA Angels. And then the Dodgers at San Diego, Houston's at Seattle. So a lot of good things happening in the world of Major League Baseball. And thanks for the update that the Cubs are out. I've always pulled, just take me out to the ball game from the late, great Harry Carey. I was in Chicago a couple of times and witnessed some Cubs games. And to have that crowd as baseball crazy is a shame they're not in. What we're going to do now is come up on what we call the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And we'll take the Big C pause. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about football and some things that are going on. And we hope that you'll come back with us. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, an iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television, and most people have a TV set in the home. But the apps that I really love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate our growth. And make sure you tell a friend about Big C Sports. Big C's top 10 in college football, and everybody has their opinion. And you don't have to agree with me, Big C, but I want to throw out Penn State right now looking like maybe number 10 team. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Penn State up in Happy Valley, Charlton, they moved up the list. They've dominated all the opponents they had. They had a little struggle in state with Pittsburgh, but they got the victory, and Pittsburgh knocked off Central Florida, so that was a quality win.
A very quality win. Number 9, Auburn, and I know this helps. It's amazing when the whole Pac-12 is rooting for Auburn to keep winning, Big C, but I put them number 9 right now. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, Auburn's in that tough SEC West, Charlton, but they showed themselves powerful, going on this season. They knocked off Oregon in the opening game of the season, Charlton, and they've rolled through their schedule thus far. They have a great defensive line, but they have to find a passing game as they move forward.
Number 8 is Florida. Them good old boys had a turnover fest against Miami to open the season, but they're quietly just keep on winning, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Dan Mullen has brought a little magic back to Gainesville. He's on his second quarterback, a young kid who did not play, football since his freshman year in high school. As a matter of fact, we just talked about De'Aaron King earlier, who beat him out in high school, who is now redshirting at the University of Houston. But Florida has so many great athletes in the SEC, Charlton, they're going to run the table until they get late into the conference.
Another team that is always under the radar, no matter how much they win, but I would put, if you look at what happened in their beatdown over Michigan, and it was a beatdown, I would put Wisconsin as high as number 7, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Wisconsin could be higher than number 7 depending on who you have in front of them. But when you look at this team, this is a complete team. They have a bunch of homegrown talent. They remind me of the Nebraska teams of back in the late 70s and early 80s, where they took all the homegrown talent. They bring in a couple of kids from out of state and put them in key offensive positions, Charlton, and they just run over everybody and have an attitude on their back.
They keep doing it, Big C. And then I would look at number 6, Oklahoma. which is always knocking on that door for a national championship like they did back in the days of the great, who was that good old boy? They always went to the Rose Bowl, not to the Rose Bowl, but to the Orange Bowl and Switzer. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when I think about what Lincoln Riley has done, I mean, it's hard to say who's in the top five when you look at college football. There are so many great teams. And as we get later in the season, this list will be adjusted again. But Oklahoma, I mean, they could always be in anybody's top three.
And this is going to surprise people. It's my opinion. But when you're not battle-tested throughout the season, I think it can show. And it's hard to get back to the national championship games 2 times in a row, Big C. It's not all elite. I would say Clemson's number 5. I know that's shocking to mainstream, but Big C, your thoughts?
Well, a lot of people would be surprised by that because they're the defending national champions, Charlton, but they're playing in the ACC. And I mean, they got an easy road where they are. You know, we're going to see once the playoffs come around if they can get through the season unscathed. I mean, they still have to play Wake Forest, who is 4-0 in their division, and Virginia Tech.
And a team that I think once you get past the top 5, top 4, it's anybody's game. But I would put LSU right now at number 4. They are a scoring machine, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they're the highest scoring offense in the country, Charlton. So, I mean, you could always rank them in the top 5 in any bracket in the country. We always known that they have tremendous athletes there, and they got a great quarterback right now in Joe Burrow. So LSU is going to give Alabama some trouble in the West.
And sometimes people just automatically pencil somebody in because they've won so many times. But there are a lot of teams that have gone out and gotten tested. Auburn went out and got tested against Oregon. If you look at LSU, they went and got tested against Texas. There are a lot. Pittsburgh, they got tested against Central Florida. Penn State got tested at Pitt. So there's a lot of teams that if you look at what happened with Notre Dame, they got tested with Georgia. I would say number 3 right now, it may be unpopular, it would be Nick Saban, Alabama Crimson Tide. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, you know, where Alabama is, Charlton, they have Tua. And as long as you have Tua, you're going to always be in the game. I mean, we have early season rankings, and a lot of that, the week will be knocked from the shaft as the season goes on. I would rather that a ranking did not come out to week 7 or week 8 of the regular college football season. But Alabama always deserves to be in the top 5.
And I would love to see rankings should be based also somewhat on strength of schedule. We talked about the high school programs that can go 58-0. But if they were playing the top high schools in the country, they would not go 58-0. So some teams get the high ranking because they're playing easy schedule and they don't lose. I would say, based on what happened with Georgia, they had to lead over Alabama the last couple of times they played on Big C. And then we saw how they really had Notre Dame handled, and Notre Dame had a late score to make the game more respectable. But I would really put Georgia right now at number 2, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Georgia has demonstrated that they should be ranked this high. You know, they've beaten a top 10 team in Notre Dame, Charlton, at home in one of the most frenziest crowds that we're going to see this college football season. And Kirby Smart has done a tremendous job down there in Athens, Georgia. So I'm not surprised that they're up there at number 2.
Now, this is my own opinion because I grew up watching Pac-12 football, and they always played the Big Ten champion. And it was always great theater to see them come out with the Rose Bowl parade and all the great athletes that would come from Ohio, and they would take on California's finest and the USC Trojans. I would say number 1 right now would be the Ohio State Buckeyes. Any team that can score the way they do, and I think their defense is legit, they're just getting better, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that would shock a lot of people having Ohio State ranked as number 1. But I really have to look at what Ryan Day has done with this team. If people remember when he was coaching the first 3 games of the season last year, they were one of the top scoring teams in the country prior to Urban Meyer's return. They have a fine replacement for Dwayne Haskins at quarterback and Justin Fields, who is a better athlete. He has a lot more mobility than what Dwayne Haskins has. And if you thought Ohio State's defense was good last year, they're even better this year. And A.J. Dobbins, the running back, now has a lot more freedom because of the mobility of Justin Fields.
Yeah, and they don't get that they had a letdown game, I think, against Purdue last year and the year before that, Iowa. But they've been punished by having 1 loss. I don't think they're going to lose to anyone this year unless they get knocked off in the playoffs. This team is legit at Ohio State. And to juxtapose that, Big C, if you think about it, 4 second-year Power 5 conference college football head coaches who need to drink that favorite moonshine you got, but that's not legal. That means they have to do it off-site. Would they have to do it off-campus, or could they bring it to the campus? Make sure your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, they have their own private office on campus, and who knows what's in that coffee cup that they're sipping on.
Yeah. Well, Chip Kelly, UCLA, think about what he's done. He's 4 wins and 12 losses, and he's supposed to be the next Terry Donahue at UCLA. There's also Chad Morris at Arkansas. He's 4 wins and 12 losses, and he's getting some California wine from San Jose State for giving San Jose State the first win in 24 tries over a Power 5 conference program. Jerry Pruitt, Tennessee. He can probably make his own moonshine down in Tennessee, Big C. He's 6-10. And then Willie Taggart at Florida State. I know he left Oregon to go south again and thought he would have greener pastures. He's only 7-9 at Florida State, but they started declining even when the great Jimbo Fisher was leaving. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, and you name those 4 coaches, Charlton, and the one that's under the most pressure is Willie Taggart. He has the most wins of the 4.
Yeah.
And he'll be the first one to lose his job. He's the only African-American one in that poll. But of those 4 coaches, Willie Taggart will be the first one to be let go.
And that's a shame. But we know it's about white skin privilege, too. I even know Paul Feinbaum, that does some work down for the SEC, had mentioned some things about coaching. He didn't blast any of the white coaches. He only blasted the black one. And I know he's still a Southern boy, good old boy, but nobody calls him out. That's garbage. If you're going to blame one, name them all. We just did, no matter what color they are. Big C, I want to jump to the NFL. There's a lot of good stuff. This past weekend, the NFL saw 6 backup quarterbacks starting, and these are some of the best backup quarterbacks of all time, and it really shows the strength of the game now. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the NFL is always next man up, and everyone never notices the backup quarterback until that starter goes down. And we had some memorable performances this last weekend from some backup quarterbacks who step up and got their team some valuable victories.
Let me give you some guys back in history. Earl Morrall, 1968, Baltimore Colts won the NFL MVP and led the team to a 13-1 record and a Super Bowl appearance. The 1972 Dolphins led them to 11 straight wins. And I think they were 15-0 at the regular season, and then the AFC Championship game over the Steelers before they won a Super Bowl. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, you think about a backup doing his job, and Earl Morrall unfortunately got replaced in 2 Super Bowls by Johnny Unitas in the first one against the Jets when they lost in '69, and then by Bob Greasy when they beat the Redskins in '72. But he did get a Super Bowl win against the Cowboys in 1971 down in Miami.
Yeah, that guy was amazing. Now, this is a name. You think about guys coming off the bench. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. Roger the Dodger Staubach came off the bench, leading the Dallas Cowboys to a 10-0 record as a starter during the 1971 season, which ended up with Dallas winning the Super Bowl by the score of 24-3 over Miami. And that must have Jerry Jones even salivating to this day. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Craig Morton had been the starter in Dallas, and Tom Landry decided he wanted to go with Roger Staubach, and it ended up with Dallas Cowboys' first Super Bowl victory.
Yeah, and I think when you think about those days, people already assumed that Staubach was just a starter. No, he came off the bench. Big C, another great player. Vince Ferragamo nearly upset the Pittsburgh Steelers in Super Bowl 14. It was Ferragamo that took for the LA Rams starter Pat Hayden's place with 5 games remaining in the 1979 regular season. The Rams were just 5-6, and Ferragamo went in. They were 4-1 while winning the NFC Western Division. I remember that game in the Super Bowl. It brought LA alive again. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it was technically the first home Super Bowl in Super Bowl history, Charlton,
yeah.
And the Super Bowl Steelers are on the midst of their 4th Super Bowl run, and the Rams were a formidable opponent at that time. They had Ferragamo, Lawrence McCutcheon on the team in the backfield.
Yep.
But Vince Ferragamo, got his big break when Pat Hayden broke his leg.
Yeah, I remember. Ferragamo, I believe, also played up in Canada. That good of boy has traveled north and south of the border and always played great. Jim Plunkett, it's a shame that he's not in the Hall of Fame All-American at Stanford. And he's playing for the Boston Patriots, New England Patriots, of course. And then the Raiders, of course, he had a stint with the Niners as well. But the great Jim Plunkett, he replaced starting quarterback Dan Pastorini 5 games into the 1980 season. Plunkett resurrected his career, became the first wild card team to win the Super Bowl that year. and it earned MVP honors, throwing 3 touchdowns in a 27-10 win by the Oakland Raiders over the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's a shame that Goodable is still not in the playoffs. I remember he hit Kenny King on a long touchdown pass. Big C, your thoughts?
Still not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but this shows you what perseverance will do. Former #1 pick overall in the NFL. You know, he resurrected his career in Oakland. Charlton took the Raiders to their second Super Bowl victory in franchise history. Not only that, in 1983, he went on to win a second Super Bowl against the Redskins down in Tampa for the Raiders. And this is a guy who was put on the scrap heap as a backup and showed what he could do once he was given the ball once again.
So if he would have won 3 Super Bowls, he would be in the Hall of Fame, Big C. Is that what you're saying, your thoughts?
If he'd have worn any other color other than silver and black, Charlton, he would have been in the NFL Hall of Fame. And if his last name had to have been Plunkett, he would also be there.
That's crazy. You can Google that. Billy Kilmer, the great Washington Redskins quarterback, replaced the injured Sonny Jurgensen, and he led the Redskins to the 1972 Super Bowl, where they lost to the Miami Dolphins. And that was the perfect season with that no-name defense, Big C. Your thoughts?
The over-the-hill gang versus the no-name defense. Billy Kilmer was a former UCLA quarterback, Charlton. He was injured in a car wreck. He was a draft pick of the San Francisco 49ers. He was released. George Allen picked him up as a coach of the Washington Redskins. He replaced Sonny Jurgensen and took the Skins to their first Super Bowl appearance.
Yeah, it's just those players, they didn't have the athleticism that you see guys with now, but a lot of them have go to the Hall of Fame and wear the gold jacket. Jeff Hostetler, 1990, replaced former Super Bowl MVP, the great Phil Simms, after being injured versus Buffalo during the regular season. Now, Hostetler went on to lead the Giants to that most memorable Super Bowl where Whitney Houston sang the national anthem, and they beat the Giants by the score. The Giants won 2019 over the Bills. And I think it was Norwood missed it wide right from 49 yards, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, how iconic. You know, the same team that knocked out Phil Simms and gave Jeff Hostetler an opportunity. Hostetler was able to come back and obtain a Super Bowl victory against them down in Tampa in the most memorable, national anthem all time in an NFL game by Whitney Houston, Charlton. Yeah. But this is what you have to be prepared for as a backup quarterback in the NFL. You never know when your time is going to come. Everybody banks on the starter, not realizing that the backup quarterback is the most popular guy on the roster because he's normally never called on to go in.
Yeah, never called on, Big C. Kurt Warner, I mean, he was bagging groceries. In 1988, he started with Trick Green and they entered the preseason. I think it was 98, entered in the preseason. And Warner came in and created one of the most miraculous stories in NFL history. A team that won just 4 games in the previous season was the #1 seed heading into the postseason and went on to become the greatest show on turf. And Warner racked up a then record of 414 yards in the St. Louis Phillies win over the Tennessee Titans in Super Bowl. And I remember that the Titans were right about the 1.5-yard line as the time expired, but the great late Steve McNair, that was an incredible football game. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Eric Dyson came up just a yard short on a pass from Steve McNair in that Super Bowl, but the Rams, it was just their destiny that year. And you think about the record performance that Kurt Warner and the Rams offense produced in the NFL that season, Charlton. And Kurt Warner would go on to be in 2 more Super Bowls, a very memorable Super Bowl when he was with the Cardinals down in Arizona against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ended in the same way on a Santonio Holmes catch in the end zone for the Steelers, and the Cardinals came up short. And you also got to think about James Harrison had the longest interception return in Super Bowl history in that game, 100 yards for a touchdown at the end of the first half.
I remember that, Big C. And then one of the most, I guess you could say, the NFL's prodigal quarterback, the great Tom Brady in 2001. Franchise quarterback Drew Bledsoe sustained a serious injury near the end of the Patriots' Week 2 loss to the Jets. And that happened right about the sideline. And as they say, the rest is history. 19 years, 9 Super Bowl appearances, 6 Super Bowl victories, 4 Super Bowl MVPs, and arguably the most accomplished quarterback in NFL history. And like he says, we're still here. Big C, your thoughts?
And he is still there, Charlton, producing at a high rate. And, one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL still today. Tom Brady is a record book and a history thesaurus within himself when it comes to the NFL. And as you say, what else can be said about the guy?
Yeah, we're still here, Big C. Nick Foles, Philadelphia Eagles, came off the bench in Week 13, replacing injured Carson Wentz. In 2017, the Eagles went on to the playoff wins over Atlanta and Minnesota before Foles earned MVP honors in the Super Bowl, and the Eagles beat the great Tom Brady 41-33 over the Patriots. And again, off the bench, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the Eagles' biggest games over the last 2 seasons, Charlton, Nick Foles had a hand in those. He has a statue outside of Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia now with the Eagles' first Super Bowl victory in franchise history, Charlton. So you just don't realize how valuable a backup quarterback in the NFL is until you need him.
Yeah, and when you think about that, everybody has their own opinion about quarterbacks now and who, whether you're going to take these rookie quarterbacks that used to always sit at least a season, Big C, to learn on the sidelines before they came in. So when we just talked about some of the great quarterbacks throughout the history of the NFL universe that went on to NFL stardom, Super Bowl stardom, and even Hall of Famers, why is there always such thought that we have to draft a quarterback number 1 overall when a lot of these guys that came in to be stars, they were not drafted number 1 overall? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if you look at the history of the NFL, Charlton, there's a long lineage of quarterbacks who have sat on the bench and got an opportunity and became great stars in this league.
Yeah.
And the list that you just named off, Charlton, all of those guys on that list, none of them were first-round draft picks.
No.
They were all guys that were drafted in later rounds, Charlton. They were sitting on the bench. Some of them were fortunate enough to make the team. But as they got an opportunity to make the team, because they had an opportunity to study, these are the most studious guys in the locker room because they're always in the quarterback meetings, Charlton, in the offensive meetings, taking notes, paying attention.
Yeah.
Working with the starting quarterback, finding out what they see. But also, Charlton, during the game, they're on the sideline with the head coach. They're charting what's going on. They're recognizing what's going on with the offensive coordinator and the head coach.
Yeah.
So they're always prepared. They're just waiting on their opportunity.
When you think about some of the greatest moments in sports history and when it came to quarterbacking, some of the things that come to my mind, Big C, I would say the sea of hands. It was the Oakland Raiders and the Miami Dolphins, the great Ken Stabler, late Ken Stabler, and he threw a pass, I think it was Clarence Davis, in the corner of the end zone, and many Dolphin players swear the ball hit the ground. But that, to me, was a seminal moment that will always weigh in my mind. And then, but I would say the one that tops that, in my opinion, is the immaculate reception with the great Franco Harris, Terry Bradshaw. I think French Fuqua has something to do with that. The great Jack Tatum. Many Raider players to this day, they swear that ball hit the ground, and Franco won't say anything other than he caught it in the air. But isn't that something, the sea of hands, that benefited the Raiders, and then the immaculate reception? The Raiders were involved in both. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's always about timing. And now we have all this instant replay that still can't get things right. Back in those days, Charlton, there were so many great games and calls that were made and missed. When you think about it, over time, Mike Renfro against the Steelers.
Yeah.
Caught a ball in a playoff game at Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh, got both feet down.
Yeah.
And officials called him out of bounds. So it's about the eye-hand coordination, where the official is seeing what the hands are doing. And that's always been the history of the NFL.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just amazing how we have things right now that you can put your hands on it and people can say who was the best of all time. I just want to cover some players as far as passing offensive leaders. We're going to look at, I would say, the best right now, even though people still may say Brady. I would say Patrick Mahomes. He's passed for 1,195 yards. And then the yards don't mean that you're the best. But when you have Andy Dalton with 978 yards, and he was the second as far as yardage, and then Phillip Rivers for L.A., for the Chargers, 944 yards. Case Keenum has thrown for 933 for Washington, but they're a joke of a team. And then you have Matt Ryan that's thrown for 928 for Falcons. But would you believe that you can have the most yards, but a lot of these teams are not winning? Cincinnati's not winning. The Redskins are not winning. And the Falcons are struggling. Even the Chargers are struggling some. The only team that's winning, that has a quarterback that's throwing for over 900 yards, really, these teams are losing. Why is that the case? They have a lot of yards passing, but they're on losing teams, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, a lot of yards passing generally, Charlton, is generated because you're playing from behind.
Yeah.
And you spoke about 4 of those 5 teams. They've been playing from behind all year long. So your quarterback is going to have more than ample opportunity to produce yardage.
Yeah.
Yardage is about how you utilize it in your offensive scheme. Kansas City is not a running team. They pass the ball to run the ball. A lot of their running plays are swing passes to the outside, so that helps Mahomes generate those absorbent numbers.
Yeah, well, let me take you to something that you like when it comes to sacks, because a lot of people, if you're going to pass the ball, you're going to have time to throw it. And when you look at the sack leaders right now, Shaquille Barrett for the Tampa Bay has 8 sacks. Myles Garrett for Cleveland, he has 6 sacks. And then Preston Smith, Green Bay, which is the reason they're winning, that defense, he has 4.5 sacks. Clay Matthews for LA for the Rams, he has 4 sacks. And then Whitney Marsalis for Houston has 4. Have you noticed we're not hearing the good old boys from Denver in there at all, and they have 2 great linebackers that have not been able to rush the quarterback this year. And you would think that Watt might be in there too, but I think he only has 2 sacks on this season, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the kid that you named off from Tampa Bay, he was in Denver last year. John Elway let him go because of $1 million dispute in a contract. There was $1 million difference. And so John Elway let him go, and he has more sacks than the entire Denver Broncos defense with 8 down in Tampa Bay. So it's about timing, being in the right place in the NFL. He's found a home in Tampa because Jason Pierre-Paul injured himself in a car wreck. He got an opportunity. Now he's making the best of it. He's on pace to have 40 sacks for the season.
Let me take you back to the offensive side of the ball, Big C. When you think about rushing, you need a good running back to make your quarterback look good. Dalvin Cook, Minnesota, 375 yards. Christian McCaffrey for Carolina, 318. You have Murray and Mack, Indianapolis, 299. Ezekiel Elliott for Dallas at 289 yards. And then Mark Ingram, the second out of Baltimore, 257 yards. It's amazing that Dalvin Cook is the best running back, at least rushing-wise, in the NFL. But Cousins, why doesn't Cousins look any better if he has a guy right now who's actually leading the league in rushing, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, this offense in Minnesota even last year was built for running. Dalvin Cook went down second game of the season with a knee injury, and so did the fortunes of the Vikings offense.
Yeah. Well,
when you think about your cousin in Minnesota, he is a game manager. He is not a quarterback that's going to go out and dominate the league. The Minnesota Vikings will go as far as Dalvin Cook can stay healthy this year. He was leading the league in rushing when he was hurt last year.
Yeah.
He's leading the league in rushing once again.
Well, let me just cover 2 more stats. When you look at receiving, Keenan Allen for the Chargers, 404 yards. Sammy Watkins for Kansas City, and this guy's amazing, 311 yards. John Ross, the third, Cincinnati, 292. Odell Beckham Jr. has 288, but a lot of that came in the game against the Jets back in the Meadowlands. And then Travis Kelce, as a tight end, he's 5th in the league receiving yards with 284. Does that surprise you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Not in the Kansas City offense. You got the leading yardage passer in the league. That means that you can have some receivers with some productivity. And if you look at Kansas City over the last 2 seasons, they've always had 2 of the top 5 receivers in the league yardage-wise.
Well, that's amazing. And we'll close out with some stats before we finish up on a few more stories for Big C Sports. I know as a defensive guy, when you put pressure on a quarterback, you hope they throw the ball, because if you have a good defensive back, you're going to get some interceptions. And right now, leading the league in interceptions, Devin McCourty, New England, he has 3. Desmond Trufant, Atlanta, has 2. Jamie Collins, Sr., New England, he has 2. And then Logan Ryan, Tennessee, 2. Kyle Fuller, Chicago, 2. It's amazing when you look at New England and how their defense is so dominant, Big C. They have 5 interceptions with their top 2 players in the top 3 in the league. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this has been the best defense in the NFL really for the last year. People just don't think about New England's defense. They always talk about Tom Brady and what the offense can do.
Yeah.
But New England, when you look at their productivity, how they've shut out their opponents, Charlton, really over the last 4 games that they played, even though they gave up a couple touchdowns to Miami, that was the backup quarterback throwing picks. But New England's defense has been lights out and the best in the NFL, giving up the second lowest point total this season.
Yeah, and I want to just finish out on the defensive side of the ball because I know without defense, we heard that defense wins championships, and some people don't believe in that, but I actually do, Big C. Total tackles, Luke Kuechly, Carolina, 36 tackles. Jordan Hicks, Arizona, 35 tackles. You have Thomas Davis, and he had for L.A., the Chargers, 33 tackles. Bobby Wagner for Seattle is still bringing it, 33 tackles. And then Blake Martinez with Green Bay, that's the reason they're winning. He's fifth in the league with tackles, 32. Are you impressed more that Bobby Wagner is still doing his thing, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is the reason why he held out during the training camp, because he wanted to be paid and compensated as one of the best linebackers in the league. You know, everybody talked about Seattle, about the Legion of Boom.
Yeah.
Any defense is only good as a coach that can put them together.
Yeah.
They've kept their coaching staff together. They brought Norton back in. He is now the defensive coordinator in Seattle. He was the linebacker coach at that time when they had the Legion of Boom. He's brought back a lot of the same characteristics and fundamentals that they worked under during that era.
Yeah, defense wins, and Russell Wilson, but that defense is always legit. I know they lost that game to the New Orleans Saints because of special teams. Had nothing to do with the defense not still bringing it, Big C. I want to just ask you this thought. Daniel Jones was drafted the 6th overall pick by the Giants in April's NFL draft. Now, Browns quarterback, Baker Mayfield, he took a shot at him in GQ magazine saying that he could not believe that the Giants wasted the draft pick on him. And then Sunday, Mayfield was 18 of 36. If my math is right, that's 50% passing, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. If my math is right, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns and only produced 13 points in a loss to the Rams. Now, Daniel Jones, just opposed to Mayfield, he was 23 of 36, 336 yards, 2 touchdowns, Big C, no interceptions. He had 2 rushing touchdowns and produced 32 points with a win over the Buccaneers. Big C, who do you trust more, your eyes or what Baker Mayfield said? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, Baker Mayfield has become what Baker Mayfield is. He's running off his mouth. He's running about his commercial advertising campaign, Charlton, and it hasn't been that concentrated on playing football this year. When you look at the Browns' lack of productivity, in 2 games this year, they scored only 13 points in 2 of their games. They scored 23 against the hapless Jets.
Yeah.
So that was their biggest offensive outburst of the year.
Yep.
And the Jets are winless. When you look at what Daniel Jones did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in his first start, Charlton, he showed himself as a dual-threat quarterback, that he was very capable of understanding the nuances of NFL defenses. Those same defenses that Baker Mayfield has played against in the first 3 games of the season and struggled. And Baker Mayfield does not have one 300-yard passing game this year through 3 games and only 1 victory. Daniel Jones has 1 victory in 1 game. So as the media was beloved to Baker Mayfield all offseason and talked about how he was going to lift Cleveland to new heights, you know, no, they're going to be less of a team than what they were last year.
Yeah, it's amazing. And sometimes you just got to let your talking on the field do your talking and not your mouth. But he's making the money, and they still believe in him. But if they get out if they finish 500, then people can say, well, it's somebody else's fault. It's all fair and level war. I wanted to say you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, an iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. If you have a TV set in your home, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television. And I really love the apps by Alexa and Google. You can Google it. Say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate our sponsors for all their support. Big C, 2019 WNBA Finals are set. After finishing with the 2nd best record in the regular season, the Washington Mystics and the Connecticut Sun will battle to see who's crowned the new WNBA champion. Adding extra intrigue to the series is regardless of who wins, we'll have a first-time champion in the best-of-5 series for WNBA, and that starts on Saturday. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, the WNBA, Charlton, is playing some fantastic basketball. I watched the game over the weekend as the Sun finished up their series But, this is going to be an outstanding game. You got series. You got the best two records in the league. That's something you normally don't get.
Yep.
You got the Washington Mystics, who've been a dominant team this year, Charlton. They've won 20 games by at least 20 points this year. So you think about that on a professional level, that you have at least 20 games, that you have a 20-plus point victory.
Yep.
And you have the league MVP on the team. Last year, if not for Delladonna's knee injury.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to this best-of-5 series between these two teams, the Sun and the Mystic, Charlton.
Yeah, it's always great. We talked about the greatest moments in sports and the greatest moments in society and what it really means for people. If you go back on this date, September 25th, 1903, with Henry and Jesse Tanner, they had a son born in New York City. They call him Jesse Oswald Tanner, and included their baby in the family legacy of literature and writing and putting things on campus. And they combined their efforts to end oppression with the creation of alternative images of beauty and harmony that would someday hopefully change the world. And when you think about Ali always saying, "I am the greatest, I'm pretty," that wasn't always the case for African American. And when you think about the parent, Henry Oswald Tanner, he was the first African American to graduate college before the Civil War. I think that's important. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all that to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this boys universe?
Well, Charlton, we're looking for a great upcoming week in college and professional football. You named off some of the greatest backup quarterbacks in NFL history. Some of those quarterbacks who started last week as backups are going to get their second run at the Peel this week, Charlton.
Yep.
Charlton, seeing what they can do to propel their team into the playoff chase.
Well, we'll be watching it too. I appreciate everybody who wants to stay safe, and make sure you tell a friend every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. Follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.